throughout the years, from side hustles to building brands for clients to now building my business myself, I have learned so much. I have made a lot of mistakes. So if you ever feel like you don't know what you're doing when it comes to branding, trust me, you're not alone. And if a brand strategist can make mistakes while building her own brand, you can definitely make them too. So listen up and learn from my hard lessons so that you don't have to learn the hard way. My background in branding started when I was 18 years old. I got an internship at an agency and ended up staying there for 10 years and rising way up to the top. While I was there, I helped hundreds of companies build their brand, and I actually rebranded the agency that I was at. During that time, after a while, I started to take on side projects. I worked as a freelancer. I had a few different iterations of my side business, and eventually I left and took a job in-house at a company as creative director and actually rebranded that company while I was there too. About 2 years ago, I started this company, Liz Marie Strategy, and I have learned a lot along the way. I actually relaunched last year, New and Improved 2.0, because I spent my whole first year learning so many lessons the hard way. Let me tell you, no matter how much I learned helping other people build their business, brand themselves, it is not the same as doing it for yourself. Whether you're trying to do the design, your messaging, or actually the day-to-day brand building, I have been there. I've gone through it all. I branded myself and I have learned some shit. So let's get into it. The first mistake I made when branding myself in this business was being way too broad. I started out thinking I wanted to work with middle market challenger brands. That's, pretty big size companies that have this disruptive focus in their industry. I really liked the idea of that. I thought it seemed great, but I really didn't know that much about them. And that's contrary to everything I ever tell my clients. Like, know your audience like the back of your hand. That's the most important thing, and be really, really specific, especially when you're starting out, about who you serve. And I just didn't do that. I really started out with an idea. I was super naive. I didn't have that much data. I didn't do that much research. I just didn't really know. And what ended up happening is that really wasn't the right audience for me at all. That's not who I serve today. I had to go through this big change in my whole business and completely switch it up because they just weren't for me, and the idea that I had in my head just didn't match reality. So lesson number one, be really, really specific and get to know your audience like the back of your hand. My next mistake was not taking advantage of the opportunities that were right there in front of me. While I was out there trying to focus on serving these bigger businesses, I had plenty of smaller businesses, startups, brand new solopreneurs coming my way without really even trying. I started to work with them and it was great, it was rewarding, they were awesome people, I loved doing the work, and yet I still clung to this idea of helping these different companies. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, I'm working with them right now, but they're really not my audience, they're not who I'm serving. I don't know why I was so resistant to this opportunity that was right there in front of me, but it took longer than I should have to make this adjustment and realize that actually who I want to work with, who I should be serving, is small business owners. Once I kind of got out of my own way, it really just took off from there. So the next mistake is that I didn't align my business model with my customers. And so this is a result of making this shift. At first, working with bigger middle market companies, I thought I would be approaching it more like a consultant. Coming from an agency background, everything is really custom, really high end, lots of time, lots of energy, lots of stuff that you're giving to your client, and that's great. For small businesses, when I made this shift, they don't need that. They don't need, 5,000 hours on a logo. It's just not worth their time or energy or their money. This was like a big ego lesson. Coming from that background, you kind of get this elitist attitude about branding or design and what it should look like and what it should be like. I really had to let go of everything I thought I knew about how to serve business owners and figure out a way to align what I offered and how I priced it with what my audience, my dream clients actually needed. It was a process. At first, even going back to way back when I was doing side projects, I remember sending out some awful proposals with just crazy high numbers for, the mom and pop, because I just didn't know that there was a different way to do it. I cringe when I think about that. And then I kind of flipped in the other direction, where in the beginning of the pandemic, I had a lot of like really, really low budget projects coming my way, and I felt like I had to take them. I just hadn't figured out that right connection between here's what I offer, here's what it costs, and it's designed for you and it's priced for you. And it took a lot of time and energy learning about my audience, figuring out who they were, figuring out what would be best for them, letting go of what I thought I knew, and designing packages and designing pricing that were much, much, much better suited and would give them exactly what they wanted and needed, just the right amount, but would also serve me as well, so I wouldn't feel like I wasn't getting my money's worth or like giving everything away. My advice to you is to focus on getting that connection between your customer, what you're offering, and your pricing. If those are all in alignment, you'll be in good shape, and I actually have a video coming up soon on that exact topic. Another mistake that I made early on was being too professional. I hate the word professional. I think it's bullshit. It doesn't really mean very much. I can be just as good at my job no matter what I'm wearing, what I look like, how I talk, how I act. But I don't know if it was coming from a financial company in my last job or the fact that I felt like I was gonna be this consultant and I kind of put on that identity that I thought I had to have. But when I first did my branding for this company, it was just like a filtered version of the real me and what I really wanted to put out into the world. Like what I thought I had to look like or sound like or be like in order to fill this role or identity I had in my head. It wasn't super authentic to me, and it was, fake, overly fake professional. And the thing about trying so hard to be professional is that you just end up being boring and generic. It was a process. It was like really kind of an identity crisis to get to the point where I was like, this isn't working for me. This doesn't feel like me. I don't feel good doing it. And it's definitely not going to connect with my new dream client that I figured out. The more clear I got on my ultimate client, the more clear I got on showing up as myself, not worrying about some fake ass idea of being professional, which goes in hand with two other mistakes that I have made. The first was worrying way too much about what other people think. This is something we all do. We all do at any different point in our lives. For me, part of it was that I was kind of shifting from my just personal social media and this kind of identity that I had into stepping into being a business owner, an entrepreneur, and using my personal brand that I had built and using that for my business. I was afraid, like, well, what about the people who actually know me in real life? Are they just gonna get sick of this? Is this annoying? Do they not want to hear about my business? And at a certain point, I just had to say, fuck it. Okay, like, someone unfollows me or I get bad feedback. They're not that's not who I'm doing this for. That's not who I care about in this context. It's just not the priority. I have continually had to let go of worrying about what other people think. Even today, getting, negative comments or feedback on ads, or people want to weigh in on what they think I should be doing in my business. You just have to let go of it. And it's not easy, and we all fall in the trap sometimes, but worrying about that too much up front really held me back from being myself and really embracing my personality in my business. And the next piece of that is being afraid to show up with my values and be super, super clear and strong and vocal about my values. That may seem surprising because my values are really what drive my business. I'm super upfront with them from the beginning. That has been a journey, because as much as I always preach and encourage brands to lead with values, I think it's a great thing to do. I think the people that it resonates with are really going to align with you, and the people that it doesn't resonate with aren't your people anyway. It's still scary to do it. It's still scary to say, like, this is my line in the sand. If you don't agree with it, fine, I don't care. It gets easier every time, but that was definitely a fear in the beginning. I didn't know how it was going to be received. I didn't know if I was doing it wrong. I was just afraid, I think, to mess up. The flip side has happened that obviously you can still mess up, but the more vocal I have been about what I stand for, the more convicted I feel. Another mistake that I've made was not prioritizing my customer experience. Now, I'm a service provider, so for me, customer experience is really, my client experience, how I serve them. It applies to everyone, even if you sell a product or something like that. I think this just came from not knowing any better, and it just never occurred to me to even think about providing my service any differently than I had always done it. As I started to get clients, I had great feedback, great testimonials. They loved the work, they got good results. And so for a long time, I just didn't stop to think, like, all right, how can I be doing this better? There wasn't one moment, there wasn't, some negative experience that prompted this big change in me. I just started to feel like The more I understood who I was working with and who I wanted to work with, the more I realized like maybe this could be better. Maybe there are gaps. Most of the people I work with on the strategy side are feeling really foggy and overwhelmed in their business. It had never occurred to me that maybe the process of working with me wasn't making that easier. Maybe I could make them feel more clear and more in the loop just by how I walk them through the service. So that led me to doing things like creating a dashboard so they always know what stage we're at, being really, really specific with our timeline so they always know what to expect. It's not this open-ended like, well, it could take this many weeks, but it might take this many weeks. I started to get really, really specific with the experience that I was delivering and trying to be empathetic with my client as they go through this process. It started because I was working on automating parts of my business, so I wanted to implement a workflow system. And so I hired someone to help me and really started to design from point A to B or start to finish what I wanted my client experience to look like. It has been really huge. It's been a better experience for my clients, but it's also just been huge for me. I feel that much more confident that I'm giving them their money's worth, that I'm really helping them with something. It's easier for me to manage throughout the way. Learning that lesson of prioritizing that client experience has been really, really huge. Another mistake that I made, and I still make all the time, probably even today, was and is overthinking. We get in our own head so much sometimes, especially when it comes to trying to brand yourself. You want to tell your own story, you want it to be perfect, you want it to resonate, it has to be good, it's so meaningful to you. It's hard, and when I was doing it for myself, when I was rebranding last year, there were times when I was spinning and I had to get myself out of that mindset because it's so personal to you. I had to learn the hard way that sometimes you just have to put something out there and see if it works. You have to just try, this is good enough, let's test it, let's learn. And switching to that like experimental mindset of iterating and constantly evolving, constantly growing has been really, really transformative for me. And I still do it sometimes. I still overthink, I still get stuck in that loop, but I'm also learning tricks to break out of it. At the end of the day, there are so many things that we all have to work on as business owners. You just can't afford the time and the energy that it takes to obsess over every little detail. Sometimes done is better than perfect. The last mistake I'm going to share with you today was not getting help. It took me quite a while to realize, all right, you're not doing this by yourself. My personality is, I can figure that out. That's just how I am. I love to learn. I have a lot of broad, diverse, random skills. If there's a challenge in my business, no matter what it is, my default mode is, I'll figure that out. I'll read the book, I'll watch the YouTube, I'll take the class, whatever it is. And that's cool, especially when you're first starting and you don't have money to hire people or you're just trying to get going, but it's also draining as fuck. You're also not gonna do as good of a job as someone who this is their expertise. Like this is what they live and breathe and do every single day. It's what they know. They are the absolute pro. Period. The first step for me of getting help from other people was really on like the mental health side. I joined this accountability group with several other women business owners. It was what helped me break out of that overthinking spinning, just to hear that they were going through the same things I was going through, to get input and say like, what do you think about that? It started with just having those conversations, which then led them to tell me over and over again, actually, maybe you should get help with that thing you're trying to do. Within just the first meeting, I started researching and figuring out, all right, who can I outsource some stuff to? And so I got help with my systems and my processes and my workflows. I got help from a marketing strategist. I hired a virtual assistant. Those things just really helped me get to a level and progress so much more quickly than I ever could have managed by myself. And that helped me so much to not only get out of my own head, but out of my own way, so that I could focus on what I'm really, really good at, not waste my time or energy on the things that really aren't in my best zone of genius, in my skill set. And that really helped me get to that next level in my business where I wasn't standing in my own way anymore. I had really laid the foundation that would help me grow. Now I'm continuing to build out my team of designers, of writers, of editors, of people who are supporting me day in and day out, so that I can focus on what I'm really good at and they can focus on what they're really good at, and we'll all be better together. So my lesson for you is, sure, do everything you have to do to get the job done, especially when you're just getting started, but ultimately you are going to grow much faster and you're going to go much further if you get help from experts in whatever area that you need support in, because they're gonna really know their shit and you can focus on what you're really good at. So hopefully you have learned a lot from my mistakes, and you don't have to make these mistakes when it comes to your brand. I hope you are able to build an amazing brand, whether you're doing it yourself or with help from experts like me. And if you would like a little bit more help, you can download my free training, How to Build a Powerful Brand from Scratch. It's a 3-part video training that outlines the key components of building a successful brand and how to approach them on your own. All right, y'all, if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down there. And check me out at LizMarieStrategy or LizMarieStrategy.com.